we discover yet another disturbing trend, the practice of gender egalitarian surgeries.
Last one I'll mention is this past week, for the first time since Congress passed a statute making it a crime in the United States to engage in female genital mutilation, to mutilate little girls. It's been a felony in the United States since 1996. We made the first case last week against doctors in Michigan for doing this terrifying thing to young girls all across the country. With our partners in the Department of Homeland Security, we brought a case against 2 doctors for doing this to children.
Former UN consultant whitewashes female genital mutilation as gender egalitarian surgeries. Link to the full article in the description. From the Daily Caller, an anthropologist who worked as a consultant for the United Nations and previously worked for the federal government whitewashed the practice of female genital mutilation, FGM, as gender egalitarian surgeries in an appearance on Tucker Carlson tonight, Wednesday night. Dr. Fuambai Ahmadu compared the brutal practice to male circumcision and complained that FGM opponents have conflated minor operations, which she referred to as a nick, with the most severe cases of female genital mutilation.
We do practice genital cutting here in the U.S. on boys, then it should not be impossible to understand that there are cultures, there are societies that practice what certain people are now calling gender.
I just don't want it in my culture, in my society. I guess that's kind of what it comes down to.
So it's okay to cut boys in your society?
Look, I'm just saying I don't want this because I think it's awful.
Well, we don't. In our culture, we don't discriminate. We have gender egalitarian surgeries.
Ahmadu insisted that she does not defend FGM, explaining, "I don't identify with the term FGM with the term mutilation. I don't know anyone in my family who does or my community, and from over 25 years of research I have done in the field, I say the great majority of women who are affected by what I call female circumcision practices do not see themselves as mutilated. When we use the term female genital mutilation, automatically a certain image comes to mind," Ahmadu complained. An image that has really been put out there for over 30, 40 years in the media. The mainstream media, obviously through efforts and women's groups. It is the idea of the most horrific type of procedure, which Ahmadu claimed makes up less than 10% of the entire prevalence of the procedures in sub-Africa and across various parts of the world. Ahmadu also claimed that Michigan doctor Jumana Nagarwala, who was accused of mutilating 2 girls, only performed a nick on the girls and that the victims weren't actually mutilated. A medical review performed on the girls found they were, in fact, mutilated. Let's talk about this word nick. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, herself a victim of this barbaric practice, talks about the use of weasel words to make this horrible custom sound almost wholesome and amazing, or as she describes it, ham-fisted attempts to appear culturally sensitive. This is what Dr. Ahmadu is doing when she claims that opponents of these dreadful violations of human rights are conflating as harmless practice with the life-threatening and bloody cases. Ironically, she attempts to conflate this brutal surgery with male circumcision. But what do the experts say? The World Health Organization has quite a bit to say about this, and I recommend anyone sitting on the fence to read their fact sheet, links provided below. They say female genital mutilation includes procedures that intentionally alter or cause injury to the female genital organs for non-medical reasons. The procedure has no health benefits for girls and women. Procedures can cause severe bleeding and problems urinating, and later cyst infections as well as complications in childbirth and increased risk of newborn death. More than 200 million girls and women alive today have been cut in 30 countries in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia where FGM is concentrated. FGM is mostly carried out on young girls between infancy and age 15. FGM is a violation of the human rights of girls and women. One word stands out: cut. More than 200 million girls and women alive today have been cut. Ayaan Hirsi Ali points out that the clever euphemisms used are dangerous and goes on to detail the meaning of all the procedures. I won't repeat them now, but you can see her list here and check her article. She says that the aim of FGM in all its forms is to control female sexuality. The clitoris is removed to take physical pleasure from sex and reduce the libido. In its more severe forms involving sewing the genitals up, the aim is to ensure the girl is a virgin on her wedding night. Many women must be surgically reopened, or simply with a penknife or a razor blade, in order to consummate their marriage. The consequences of FGM are ongoing psychological and physical harms, from infections to fistulas and even death. Even in its most mild form, the NIC procedure involves a young girl being held down by her loved ones and a needle poked into one of her most sensitive body parts. The moment this is done, the child becomes sexually aware. She can now be a temptation to men. She can destroy her family's so-called honor and must now behave in certain ways around boys to demonstrate her modesty. And she goes on to say, the debate around nicking, which had been previously settled, was revived again last year by an article in the Journal of Medical Ethics. The authors argued that nicking the vulva or cutting out the hood of the clitoris are less harmful and should be tolerated by a liberal society. These practices, they suggest, are ethically acceptable and not contraventions of girls' human rights. We do know that the SJWs and third-wave feminists are tripping over each other to try to convince us that female genital mutilation is only cultural and has nothing to do with Islam. What they are saying is these people are culturally inferior to us and should be graded on a special curve. But let us not fool ourselves by listening to a survivor of FGM. You know, Ali is only a woman, right? What does she know? Let us now turn to the real experts who will command what this inferior sex should do.
2 days ago in the Gambia, a baby girl bled to death from what was supposed to have been circumcision, but which turned out to be female genital mutilation. Alhamdulillah, they were charged. The parents of the baby were charged. They had committed a crime because female genital mutilation in the Gambia is outlawed. It's become a crime. And this practice persists in many, I shouldn't say really many, but in a few Muslim countries, for which Muslims all over the world are blamed. And the practice needs to be eradicated. Yes, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did approve. He did approve of female circumcision in Medina when it was presented to him, but he limited it to only a nick which would not affect the woman's ability to enjoy the blessing of sexual relations in marriage any more than it would affect a male when he is circumcised.
I see a pattern emerging here. FGM is the same as male circumcision. Okay, got it. But is this practice of making only a harmless little nick sunnah, I ask you?
But the sunnah way of doing it, the proper way of doing it, it is a sunnah. Ibn Hazm said, أجمع كل من نحفظ عنه من أهل العلم أنه sunnah. It is the consensus of all scholars that female circumcision is sunnah. Right? Also, some other scholars narrated this ijma' as well, that it is sunnah. I haven't come across myself, when I studied this mas'ala, I haven't come across any scholar who said it clearly. Scholar from the past, his opinion is not an old opinion, right? Who said that it is not sunnah.
So it is the consensus of all scholars that female circumcision is sunnah. That must be a comforting thought to the millions of young girls and their families to know that this practice is the righteous way. The sunnah is defined as a path, a way, a manner of life. All the traditions and practices of the Islamic prophet that have become models to be followed by Muslims. But we make light of a serious subject that obviously is much nuanced. We need to turn to another expert on this topic to help us with the finer points that we who are burdened with reality can learn from.
أي بنت لابد ان احنا نجيب نوديها لطبيب او طبيبه مسلمه متخصصه حاذقه في هذه المساله، تقول هذه البنت تحتاج الى الخفاض وهذه البنت لا تحتاج الى الخفاض، بنت تحتاج الخفاض فنخفض لها وبنت لا تحتاج الخفاض لا نخفض لها. لكن انا اجي انكر شعيره من شعائر الاسلام وسنه من سنن الله. مجمع البحوث الاسلاميه في الازهر الشريف عمل جلسه في 14 نوفمبر 1994 ومعايا صوره القرار، لو حبيت تاخديها تصوريها ووريها للناس وريها. اكمل. قضيه خفاض الاناث بعد ان نشرت محطه CNN تقريرا عن ختان احدى الفتيات في مصر بطريقه بشعه، وهو ده اللي اثار هذه القضيه الان. خلي بالك حضرتك، لان الغرب يريد ان يرفض علينا ثقافته
يعني
وفلسفته.
ما فيش ختان بشع وختان غير بشع، الختان ختان.
انتهى الى ما يلي. المجمع انتهى الى ومجمع البحوث اعلى هيئه علميه في العالم الاسلامي بيقول ان ختان الانثى اي خفاضها مشروع في الاسلام ولا يجوز تحريمه او تجريمه. ذهبنا باختي الصغرى الى طبيبه متخصصه، قالت ان واحده احتاجت واحده لا تحتاج. التي احتاجت ختناها خفضناها، والتي لا تحتاج لم نخفضها. أجرى مركز الدراسات السكانيه بجامعه الازهر عندنا ده بحث سنه 2001، دراسه عن عفه الفتاه المصريه وتماسك الاسره. جابوا عينه من المجتمع، كانت النتيجة أن هناك عدة عوامل أدت إلى عفة الفتاة المصرية. كان أول حاجة فيها خفاض الإناث،
لا إله إلا الله،
والثاني الحياء، ثم متابعة الأم لسلوك الابنة وتقديم النصيحة لها، ثم المحافظة على الصلاة.
هل يتم الأخذ برأي الفتاة إذا كانت تريد بالفعل ختانها أم لا؟
لا، ناخذ برأي الطبيبة هي التي تقول.
لا إله إلا الله.
طب وين رأي البنت؟
بنت إيه؟
دي
رأي البنت إذا قالت أنا ما بدي يتم ختاني
تستوجب الدية.
ما اختلفناش. إذا البنت قالت أنا مش عايزة خلاص هي حرة.
لا إله إلا الله.
هي حرة.
لكن هل هذا معمول به على أرض الواقع بالفعل؟
أنا ليس لي علاقة بالواقع، أنا لا أتحدث عما هو وإنما أتحدث عما ينبغي أن يكون.
ما بيصير ما يقول لك علاقة بالواقع. أنت شيخ دين، أنت شيخ دين وفي جامعة الأزهر، ما بيصير ما تقول ما إلي علاقة بالواقع. لك علاقة بالواقع.
الواقع خطأ، لابد أن نصحح.
I don't know why we're making such a big drama out of this. Surely if children as young as, well, infants can decide their own destiny, then Islam must truly be the most feminist religion in the world.
Excuse me, Islam to me is the most feminist religion.
Here in the West, we don't ask babies their permission to perform surgery on them because reality is a mistake and we must rectify it. I guess. This is what I find absolutely fascinating. The SJWs and third-wave feminists will not accept any argument that contradicts their conclusions about the patriarchy and the legions of white cis-het male phobias they have created. Everything falls back on the straight white male power structures and institutional dominance. But with the cases of the repugnant behavior towards women and girls in Muslim society, it's defended and explained away as some cultural thing, that due to the dogma of identity politics, white men aren't permitted to comment on, and therefore the subjugation and control of women in majority Islamic societies are protected because the subjugators are fairly high-ranking oppression Olympiads. There is contentious debate over serious subjects like parents encouraging young children to transition their gender and white people being able to identify as black. If you are born male but decide to call yourself a woman, wherever you fall on these other topics, we cannot minimize the issues of FGM with polite-sounding words. I will once again quote Ayaan Hirsi Ali for the closing comments about the practices of the most feminist religion there is and the people who should know better that carry water for it. These academics argue that referring to modest forms of FGM mutilation is culturally insensitive and demonizes important cultural practices. Yet the meaning of those important cultural practices is not examined beneath their ethical lens. Notoriously, academics and politically correct apologists like them assume any claim of culture is by rights a good thing and trumps other considerations. Seeing as they are so reluctant to critique cultural practices other than those of powerful white men, I will do it for them. The Nix symbolizes and communicates to little girls that their natural state is unclean and that pain must be inflicted on their genitals to make them acceptable to their communities. FGM is the symptom of harmful cultural beliefs that girls and women must be sexually pure, modest, and that their bodies exist to breed. Whether it's justified by being a Muslim, Egyptian, Indian, Jewish, black, a woman, or any other category venerated in the identity politic pantheon, these beliefs are not compatible with liberal societies that profess to ensure the human rights of their citizens. Be one of the swell people out there and subscribe to this channel. Help us to grow up and be closer to the superior channels out there. Yes, of course, Disturbing Trends is not the brightest bulb in the circuit, but one day we will play even a small part in the struggle for freedom and autonomy for everyone. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.